Mr. Littell, Mr. Fisher, honored guests, parents, friends, families, and members of the class of 2013. First and foremost, let's thank all of our families for their support and guidance over the past 18 years and for never giving up on us. We also owe our teachers and administrators many thanks for motivating us to try our hardest and for giving up their free time to help us out. They've all provided us with many great opportunities and have served as excellent role models. Now, I don't think I'm qualified to stand up here and give 250 students advice, and I'm sure you have received enough motivation and insight from Mike and Mr. Fisher, so I'll take the opportunity to voice an opinion. What I would really like to address here is the current state of public education. This year, New York joined 44 other states in following the Common Core standards. The goal is for every student in New York to learn the same things as every student in all the other states. And in order to do this, we apparently had to triple the number of standardized tests that students take in exchange for state funding. This year, we took assessments in the beginning, middle, and end of each course as part of this new system. Some people think this will challenge our students to work harder and help the U.S. to rise above other countries in academic rankings. They say once we adjust to the change, the test will be very beneficial. On the other hand, many teachers, principals, and administrators across the state have felt the need to retire early since their job descriptions have changed so drastically that they hardly consider themselves educators anymore. Most say that it has become all about tests and numbers, and there is very little focus on students. Yeah. Seems to depend on how you define learning. Perhaps it's your perspective that better test scores means your child is understanding more. To me, testing has very little connection to learning, and knowledge isn't something that can be definitively measured with grades. Regardless, these state assessments sit kids down for an exam on the first day of school, testing things that will take them at least a year to learn. That's pretty discouraging in high school. I can't even imagine what that does to a first grader's motivation. Learning should be about discovery. Does it make sense to begin your discovery with a summary of the journey? No, that's really just cheating yourself. You see, introducing subjects with the most difficult topics first is not a good way to get people excited about learning. We are students, not statistics, and these tests should have no effect on how we're taught. And they are affecting how we're taught. The thing is, our educational system is built for the average student. Multiple choice means the answers need to be watered down, so they test the most general concepts. I believe that we all have far greater potential, but we're taught how to be average. And is that really going to help us when we enter the job market and we're vying for the same job as our brilliant exchange student Jolene? As for the argument that the assessments are challenging our students more, sure, that's true. It is a challenge to fit the same amount of material into 1 year with more exams. It's a challenge to memorize loads of facts in time for the next test. It's also a challenge to eat a teaspoon of cinnamon in one bite without choking, but what are you really accomplishing? How about some statistics? The dropout rate in some parts of the U.S. is about 25%. In Finland, it is less than 1%. Why? Because in Finland, teaching is left up to the teachers. Standardized tests are few and far between, and guess what? They consistently outperform the U.S. in international math, science, and literacy tests. At this point, I'd like to throw a slightly relevant quote by a famous person into the mix to make my speech seem more legitimate. That appears to be how these things work. So Albert Einstein once said, "Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it is stupid." You can't judge someone's intelligence by how well he does in a small group of isolated classes. Everyone learns differently, so education is not something that can be successfully standardized. Sure, we have to get a lot of people through the system, but there are more efficient ways of doing it. Maybe it's more cost-effective to have large, impersonal classes, but to cram in so much meaningless information, we could learn a lot more if we could discover connections between biology and physics, or English and history, instead of memorizing lists of isolated facts just long enough to pass tests. I mean, you all know that kid in math class that would ask the teacher, "When will we ever use this in real life?" To which the teacher responds, "You'll need it on the final exam." No, that's not the answer. You're learning math because it has useful applications. Yet the nation's mentality seems to be that we are learning these things just to pass tests. And why do you need to pass tests? To evaluate teachers and get funding. But what good is this funding if we're not learning the things that will help us to reach our full potential? I once had a teacher who, after I asked a few too many questions, told me, "It's not something you can understand, you just have to memorize it." Don't ever let anyone tell you that. You're capable of understanding anything you set your minds to. It may take time, it may take patience. But if you really want to understand something, get out there and understand it. You can't let people try to tell you who you are or what you're worth, that you aren't as smart as someone because you scored 10 points lower than him on a standardized test. That doesn't mean anything. Grades are just numbers. It's better to learn and understand than to get good grades, and no, one does not imply the other. Anyways, this is why I tried so hard to get out of this speech. It's just that Valedictorian is a label, and I don't respect what it stands for. I'm not the smartest person in our class. I could learn something new from every single one of you. I'm good at memorizing things, but that's not so useful outside of the standardized world of high school. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you have been more successful than I was, unless your standard for judging success is a scantron. Now you must be wondering why this is relevant. We're graduating, we're out of the system. It doesn't matter anymore. Well, it still matters to anyone you know that's growing up in New York City. School should not be about passing tests to get more funding. School should be about learning, understanding, thinking critically, and finding something you're passionate about. Tell your younger siblings, friends, and neighbors to ask questions, to demand to understand, to think, and to form their own opinions, to cautiously let their grades slide and do some actual learning. Clearly, my position is that most of the numbers you are given in high school are useless. But here's one that means something. The title of this speech, which you can find in your program, is "The Phone Number of Robert Schimminger, our representative in the State Assembly." Your opinions with all of you, whether you're for or against the state assessments. Let your voice be heard, and hopefully someday education will once again be about the joy of learning and discovery. Well, that was the closest I could come to inspirational. I'm not very good at coming up with the really deep stuff. So I'm going to end with one final quote from an author named John Green. He describes the one test, the only test in your life that matters. And spoiler alert, it is not a standardized state assessment. He says, "The test will measure whether you're an informed, engaged, and productive citizen of the world. And it will take place in schools, and bars, and hospitals, and dorm rooms, and in places of worship. You will be tested on first dates, and job interviews, while watching football, and while scrolling through your Twitter feed. The test will judge your ability to think about things other than celebrity marriages, whether you'll be easily persuaded by empty political rhetoric, and whether you'll be able to place your life and your community in a broader context. The test will last your entire life, and it will be comprised of the millions of decisions that, when taken together, make your life yours, and everything will be on it. So pay attention. Thank you, and congratulations, class of 2013.